Hello, good morning, class. Today we're going to be starting credit 5 of Pre-Algebra A, writing linear equations and functions. The first lesson that we're going to go over today is lesson 5.1, writing linear equations from situations and graphs. And then we will go into lesson 5.2, writing linear equations from a table. So we are going to start on page 9 on the notes packet for Pre-Algebra A credit 5. Where we talk about writing linear equations from situations and graphs. We're going to start off by looking at the slope-intercept equation of a line. That equation is in the form y equals mx plus b, where m stands for the slope. Another word for the slope is the rise over the run. And the y-intercept is b. This is going to be the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where the line, the graph, crosses the y-axis. But we'll talk about that when we look at our first example where they see a graph and then they find the y-intercept, they find the slope, and they find the equation. So in this example, we have a graph. Let me zoom into this so you guys could see it. This gray line is the graph that we're looking at. And the first step that we're going to do is we're going to find where the y-intercept is located. And that is the point on the y-axis. So if I look at the y-axis here, and I see the graph here, I see that the point of intersection is right here. Now, this value, it's not listed, but it's actually going to be negative 100. So the y-intercept, which I will put in blue, is going to be, or b is going to be negative 100. Okay, looking at step 2, how do we find the slope? Well, to find the slope, we need to find 2 points on the line or on the graph. If this is our first point where our x-coordinate is 0 and our y-coordinate is negative 100, and my second point where this one is 2 and the y-coordinate is negative 200, I could find the slope by finding the change in y and then the change in x. So we see them do that here. Again, with these 2 points, we see on the top of the fraction, they have the first y, negative 100, minus the second y. And on the bottom, we have the first x minus the second x. So doing the math, we get 100 divided by negative 2, giving us negative 50. So our answer for this one would be y equals negative 50x minus 100. And let me just write the slope equation so you guys could see or compare. We see that m is negative 50 and b is negative 100. So we're going to look at an example using a table. Now, a table contains points that we can graph. But one thing about a table is when x is 0, that will give us our y-intercept. So if I look at the first point, 0, 0, this tells me that the y-intercept is 0, or b equals 0. Okay? Next, if I want to find my slope, I'm going to pick 2 points. So let me pick the 1, 3 and the 2, 6. So 1, 3 and 2, 6. And what I want to do is I want to find the slope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the y's, 3 minus 6, and subtract the x's, 1 minus 2. 3 minus 6 gives me negative 3. 1 minus 2 gives me negative 1. and then that ends up with a positive 3. So my slope is going to be a positive 3. Now, to write my equation, remember, we're using the default equation of y equals mx plus b. If m is 3, we plug in 3 in for m, and b is 0, we have y equals 3x plus 0. But to simplify this, we don't need that plus 0 at the end, and the equation would just be y equals 3x. So that 0 is imaginary, we don't need it, but that would be our equation. So we see how we came up with the equation in slope-intercept form by just looking at a table. Next, we'll look at an example where we look at a graph, similar to the first example that we had. And we want to do this in steps. So we want to look at the first step. The first step is to find out what the y-intercept is. And to find that, we look at the point of intersection. So we look to see where the line crosses the y-axis, and that is right here at 4. So to write that as a b would equal 4. Next, if you want to find 2 points, we have a point here. Again, that 0, 4 is a point. And then we have another point here that we have to kind of approximate. Now, this point, if I zoom into this one, I know x is 1, and I see that it goes up 4, 8, and it's between 8 and 12, and it seems like this is going to be the 10. So they're counting by 2s, or they're counting by 4s, and then halfway is 10. So this is going to be 110. So let me write step 2 down here. It's to find the slope using these 2 points, 1 or 0, 4, and 110. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the y's on top, 4 minus 10, and then subtract the x's on the bottom, 0 minus 1. 4 minus 10 gives me negative 6. 0 minus 1 gives me negative 1. And that would give me a positive 6. So m would equal 6. So let's fill in what we know. The slope is 6. The y-intercept is 4. And my equation would be y equals 6x plus 4. Okay, what we want to do next is we want to look at a description. How can we write an equation using a description? And we're going to be asked to find the slope and the y-intercept. One thing that we have to understand with descriptions is to find the y-intercept of a description, we need to know what the initial value is. And if no initial value is indicated, then we will automatically assume that b would equal 0. As far as the slope, if they give us a rate, that is going to be the slope. So if you ever see the word rate or the word change or per, that's going to tell us that that's going to be the slope. So let's look at an example. And again, all we're looking for are 2 things, the y-intercept and then the slope. In the first example, the concession stand has 500 pom-poms before the game. Let me see if I could highlight that. So 500 pom-poms before the game. The fans bought them at a rate of 25 per minute. rate of 25 per minute. How long will it take for the supply to be gone? Write an equation for this situation. Now, what is highlighted in yellow, this is the initial value. At the start, we have 500 pom-poms before the game. And then what's highlighted in blue, this is the rate. And remember, another word for rate is slope. So the y-intercept, b, would be equal to 500, because that's what we have at the beginning. And then the slope, we know it's going to be 25, but what is going on in this problem is that fans are buying 25 pom-poms per minute, so our supply is decreasing. Because our supply is decreasing, our slope would be negative 25. So with a slope of negative 25 and a y-intercept of 500, putting it together, we get y equals negative 25x plus 500. So what they got right here. And what we want to do is, again, practice this. So look at this example and see how we could apply it to our own problem. So we'll do 2 examples, and that will be it for this lesson. So the directions are to write the slope, the y-intercept, and the equation for each situation. For question 1, the race begins at a rate of 1.5 meters per second. What distance d is covered after t seconds? So we do see a rate of 1.5 meters per second. We know that is going to be our slope. So let me just write our slope down. That's going to be 1.5. Now, as far as our y-intercept, we don't have an initial value, or no initial value is indicated. So my y-intercept will be 0. So to write my equation, again, in slope-intercept form, let me write the formula up here. Y equals mx plus b. I will have y equals 1.5 x plus 0, but this will just simplify to y equals 1.5 x. And the reason why is because we don't need this imaginary 0. Okay, looking at question 2, we have 50 azalea plants arrive at a florist shop on the first day of the week. After that, they arrive at an average of 75 plants per day. How many plants will be at the shop after t days? So we're looking at 2 things. What do we have at the beginning? We have 50 azalea plants. Let me highlight that. 50 azalea plants on the first day. And each day we receive 75 plants per day. So what we see is the rate in blue. And then we see our y-intercept is the 50. So if I put it all together, the rate is going to be 75, and the y-intercept is going to be 50. For my equation, I will have y equals 75x plus 50. Now, in this problem, the slope is positive because we are adding to what we have already. We're not removing any plants. And the y-intercept is 50. So y equals 75x plus 50. Okay, class, so that completes lesson 5.1. Remember that we are not going to cover the homework. We do not need to do this section because you guys don't have a textbook. So I'm crossing out this section. And all you guys need to do is the checkpoint, the 5.1 checkpoint. On your assignment packet, you're going to do question 1. And then you're going to do question 2. For these questions, you're going to find the slope, find the y-intercept, and then write your equation. And notice that on these graphs, they don't give you points, but you could automatically find your own points. Example would be, here is a point, and here is another point. So find out what those points are, and then find your slope that way. Thank you guys, and I will see you for the next lesson.